呢個人好重要㗎。喺美國歷史度，佢叫 Thomas Paine，佢寫一本書叫《Common Sense》。呢個美國大革命嘅思想根源就係佢呢個本書。呢個人咧就係佢阿媽就俾嗰啲英國人斬咗頭嘅。呢個就係 Queen Mary II 嘅妹阿 Anne， 好慘啊！佢一生最出名嘅英國軍人就係佢打敗拿破崙嘅喺維達 Waterloo。係各位網友，我哋今日嚟到 National Portrait Gallery 嚇，就係會睇到由 Tudor 到近代嗰啲名人嘅畫像或者相。嗱，呢個首先第一幅，佢由 Tudor 開始 ，Sir Thomas More， 呢個係一個聖人嚟嘅，呢個係嚇。咁就係我細個讀嗰本書，成日都好崇拜 Sir Thomas More。A Man for All Seasons 就係佢講法律係保護，有時保護咗壞人，更多時間保護咗好人。佢咧唔肯向 Henry VIII 佢真正效忠，結果咧佢係被處死㗎，佢係被處死嘅。呢個佢個家人，大約係仔啦、新抱啦、女啦，呢個就係嚇。呢啲都係應該係佢啲有神職嘅人員喺度。佢本身係做到 Chancellor 啦，但係因為佢唔改新政，佢唔肯效忠 Henry VIII， 唔肯宣誓，被處死嘅呢個。所以天主教覺得係聖人嚟呢個。圖啊，就係講 Robert Clive。Robert Clive 最後帶東印度軍隊打敗蒙兀兒帝國。等英國終於佔領晒成個印度，但呢個人嘅人品好差。呢個屏風咧，講啲人打拳啊，係個詩人拜郎嗰個先生教佢 fencing 嘅先生做俾佢嘅。大家知啊，浪漫派詩人拜郎。呢個人好重要㗎。喺美國歷史度，佢叫 Thomas Paine， 佢寫一本書叫《Common Sense》，就係佢就係呢個美國大革命嘅思想根源，就係佢呢個本書所以叫嚟出嚟嘅，叫《Common Sense》。呢個就係講人權嘅，呢個就係嚇。到法國大革命嗰時咧，佢又寫咗本書啊，《The Rights of Man》，係為法國大革命。講嘢呢幅畫係歷史性嘅時刻嚟㗎。1833年嗰個改革法案就將投票權俾咗大部分嘅男人。其實由呢刻英國就可以叫做民主啦，基本上可以叫做民主國家。呢幅畫太大啊，賣唔去呢幅畫，冇人肯買。結果咧，呢條友咧就賣咗俾呢度 Portrait Gallery。廢除奴隸會議啊，400幾個 delegate， 英國係最早廢除奴隸制度嘅。呢個歷史係真。呢個 Oliver Cromwell 啊，就係佢推翻 Charles the First 嘅，就變咗一個 republic。但係佢死咗之後咧，就唔能繼續。其實佢係軍隊嘅第2號人馬，但呢個人好叻嘅，好多人服佢。結果打敗咗呢個勤王嘅軍隊。呢個係晚年嘅 Charles II， 非常著名奢侈嘅呢個人啊，口不對心嘅呢個人係 Charles II。呢個係 Charles II， 佢爸爸俾人哋趕走咗，殺死咗。後來佢咧就復辟嘅，因為嗰個Thomas 呢個 Cromwell 死咗之後咧，就係傳俾個仔，點知搞到一塌糊塗，啲人就揾翻佢翻嚟復辟咁就。啊，呢個就 Charles the First 啊，呢個俾人哋殺死嗰個。 呢個係西班牙同英國打咗20年仗之後，終於和談喺 Somerset 嗰度開會嗰啲人。呢個係
上次去嗰度
係Somerset 咧 ，Somerset House 係 Tudor 嘅皇宮嚟嘅，後來就唔用啦。呢個就係好啦 ，Elizabeth 死咗，咁咧就係呢個人咧就係佢阿媽就俾嗰啲英國人斬咗頭嘅。佢咧一早咧，因為下一個親戚就係佢話佢唔介意佢阿媽俾人哋斬咗手。佢係蘇格蘭嘅國王，喺蘇格蘭嗰時咧，佢叫 James the Sixth， 但嚟到英國又係英國國王。英國咧由頭數過，佢就係 James the First。咁樣點樣嗌佢咧？咁啊，即係 James the Sixth of Scotland and James the First of England。後來人哋覺得好煩，咁就 James Six and One and Six， 你知唔知？都係佢。
做兩個王朝。
佢就開啟呢個 Stuart Dynasty。呢個就係 Queen Mary the Second 嘅妹阿 Anne， 好慘啊！佢一生，佢懷孕17次，一個 BB 都 survive 唔到。人工即係佢流產咗5-6次，死仔其他嗰啲全部生出嚟冇幾耐死咗，一個係活到幾歲啫，都死埋，一個好 painful 嘅人生。但係佢係一個好偉大嘅女王咧，就係喺佢係因為佢好相信嗰啲有能力嘅人，係佢喺佢期間將本來咧英皇同時係蘇格蘭王，蘇格蘭咧就炒即係去投資啊喺巴拿馬，結果咧就失敗，就欠到周身債，就咧就叫咗 The Act of the Union， 將英國同埋蘇格蘭兩個王合併，就叫 United Kingdom 啦，叫 Britain 啦。嗰陣就開始 Britain 其實就係羅馬人叫整個英倫三島嘅名，英格蘭蘇格蘭嘅名。靈頓 Duke of Wellington 最出名嘅英國軍人就係佢打敗拿破崙嘅喺維特 Waterloo。去到呢個時候咧，你見到咧啲人全部戴呢啲咁嘅 curl 嘅頭髮，後來咧就白色嘅 curl 頭髮。我老婆問點解啲人係咪戴啲假髮？戴啲假髮咧係由路易14嗰陣時開始興起嘅，啲法國貴族。結果而家我哋法官咧戴嗰啲假髮啦。點解戴啲假髮咧？係因為佢哋染咗梅毒，佢啲頭髮甩咗。一個，第二嗰啲頭髮成日生虱，咁佢哋咧就剃光個頭戴假髮，笠上係咪好容易啊？而且咧，就算有頭髮有虱都唔緊要啦。佢攞啲頭髮出去曬，啲雀仔會啄咗啲虱啊嘛。呢個係嗱呢嗰啲咧就係啲科學藝術嘅巨人啦。呢個就係我哋自由主義嘅祖師John Locke。就係佢係講人係有 non-alienable right， 呢個係大思想家學。呢個佢係着呢個智慧女神嘅服裝。其實呢個人咧就係呢一個係 Elizabeth Carter， 係著名嘅詩人嚟嘅，而且好靚，話係最聰明嘅女人。King George the First 係去到 Stuart Dynasty 完咗之後，佢哋就喺德國揾一個人翻嚟做英國國王，因為佢係遠親嚟嘅。佢係唔識講英文嘅，終身都唔識講英文。佢而家自己50幾歲，學唔切。佢就開啟咗 Hanover 王朝。呢一個係 Mary the Second。佢係呢一個係個英國國王個女，嫁咗去荷蘭。佢老豆 James the Second 對天主教即係頒布啲措施對天主教有利，於是咧佢就叫佢同埋叫佢老公帶兵去推翻佢老豆，你知唔知啊？結果咧嗰個就係荷蘭嘅攝政 William the Second， 同埋佢帶兵去英國，佢老豆走咗佬， 咁呢個咧就叫 Glorious Revolution 光榮革命。咁佢就同埋 William 咧就一齊統治。由佢死咗之後咧，就佢個妹，佢冇仔啊，就係 Anne 又冇仔女，咁就完啦。呢個 Stuart Dynasty 就完啦，呢個就係。嗰個 William 咧就整咗好多權利法案啊，係奠定咗君主立漢嘅基礎嘅，其實係君主立憲嘅基礎。佢老公呢個唔係呢個，呢個應該係 William the Third。呢個就 William the Third，我聽講就係 William the Third，就係佢奠定英國君主立憲嘅基礎。佢係荷蘭嚟自荷蘭。就係佢俾人哋推翻咗，就係佢俾人哋推翻咗，佢個女推翻佢，佢個女婿，佢俾人哋推翻咗 James the Second， 咁佢就走咗去法國。後來佢個仔同埋佢個孫咧都想復辟嘅，幾次想復辟，就係打咗好多次仗嘅。呢個人就係呢個就係 The Black Prince， 嗰個紅寶石就係佢留落嚟嘅，呢個就係
皇冠嗰個。
啊，好出名嘅 Thomas Cranmer， 佢大力主張轉新教嘅，所以咧佢好驚 Mary 翻嚟做皇帝，做嘅 King， 佢就捧嗰個 Jane Eyre， 嗰個 Jane 啊，所以咧佢就大力去捧呢個 Jane Grey。結果一齊被斬首嘅。呢個咧就係 Henry the Eighth 晚期啊，係肥到咧行唔喐咁滯。佢後生嗰陣好靚仔㗎，佢咧隻腳受咗傷。就一路個傷唔好得，潰爛嘅，好臭嘅，又性無能，所以咧佢第5個 Queen 咧就不停出呢個紅杏出牆，結果俾佢斬咗手，嗰條友俾佢斬手。佢隻腳係腐爛啊，就係臭嘅。其實因為一定係糖尿病啦，呢個唔使講。300幾磅嘢嚟抬佢出入。嗱，呢個就 Tudor Dynasty， 嗰陣時咧就叫做 The War of the Roses。Henry the Fourth 然後傳到 Richard the Third 咁結果咧就係咧呢個咧就 Edward the Fifth， 佢哋咧就係推翻咗 Henry the Seventh 咧，就推翻咗佢呢個就係咁就因為咧話佢謀殺啲仔，就係殖民亂。Tudor Dynasty 咧就係呢個人傳落嚟嘅 Margaret Beaufort， 就係咧佢係同呢一個呢個 York 係有關，然後佢唔係同呢個Lancaster 家族有關，而佢又娶咗 York 嘅一個女人，結果佢又娶咗呢個 Prince of Wales， 娶咗呢個Catherine of Aragon， 唔係佢。結果就傳咗 Henry the Eighth， 大家清楚啦。Henry the Eighth 傳俾 Edward the Sixth、Mary、Elizabeth， 去到呢個 Tudor Dynasty 完咗呢個 Henry the Seventh 嗰個妹啊，就嫁咗英國。
You know who this is?
Yes.
Princess in the Tower, right?
Princess in the Tower, yeah. The Vanishing Prince.
So no, they don't list Richard. So it's Edward, 12 years old, and then Richard, 9.
Richard, the
Uncle Richard usurps the throne.
The Richard the Third.
That's right.
Now the historians think that the princes are not killed by Richard the Third, but when they come back to try to restore power,
It depends who you speak to. This is an ongoing debate. You don't mind me you recording,
Yeah,
but you don't
yeah.
mind me talking, yeah?
Okay.
It depends who you speak to. There's a Richard III Society today,
yeah.
and they are very protective of
Yes.
Richard because they feel that Shakespeare gave him a bad name. Yeah, the hunchback, the villain.
Yeah.
And they think he wasn't so bad.
Yes,
yeah?
yes.
Shakespeare's got a lot to answer for.
Ha.
Now, some of them, not all of them, think that the princes, he didn't give the order to have them murdered.
Yes.
So some would think it's Margaret Beaufort.
Ah.
Some will think it's Henry.
Henry,
They
yes.
got both motives.
Yeah.
But the others would think it's Richard.
Yeah.
Some would think they escaped.
They escape. Yeah.
Yeah, because during his
They
reign, they
escape.
were the pretenders.
There are two pretenders coming.
Pretenders, Lambert Simnel and
I know.
Perkin Warbeck.
And he said these are pretenders. They may be the real
Yeah.
person. Yeah.
But
They're
then-
insurrection.
But then you know about their bones that
Yeah,
were
yeah.
found about
They were
150
found.
years
Yeah,
later.
in the car park.
No,
His
car
bone is
park,
about
This is car park. This is the bones in the tower.
tower, but the loyal house do not like them to examine
That's
the
right.
DNA.
That's right.
So
The
there is
Queen,
the debate.
For her own reasons, that's right.
Yeah.
So their bones, if it's their bones, Westminster Abbey today, and then of course some people want the bones exhumed, as you know,
Yeah,
to do
I
the
know.
DNA. But whether King Charles would give permission, we don't know.
You don't know.
But you see, the thing is, if permission was ever given, and it's proven they're the princes, that would obviously stop the theory they escaped.
Yes.
Clearly, they never escaped.
Yes.
But it won't resolve the theory.
Yeah.
who
Where
had them murdered.
who killed them? Yeah.
That's an
Yeah.
ongoing, what we call who done it.
Yeah. I know.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Okay. Thank you very
But
much.
nice
huh?
conversation. I hope.
Nice conversation. Yeah.
You visiting? You live in London?
佢到60-70歲仲有，其實伊麗莎白一世有好多寵臣嘅，呢個係最後一個啦。到佢死嘅，嗱你睇啲畫畫出嚟，呢啲衫真係
法寶
好似絲綢咁樣，
豬仔，
好靚仔嚟嘅。呢個咧就係 Sherwater Valley 嗰陣時咧，其實西班牙就發達噶嘛，喺南美洲掘咗好多金銀出嚟。英國咧就係俾啲 charter 佢哋去搶啲西班牙船，搶咗翻嚟咧就分俾分俾 Elizabeth I 咁樣發達。所以加埋咧呢個佢哋新教嘅問題咧，西班牙就大舉打英國啦。就用無敵艦隊，結果俾 Elizabeth I 嘅艦隊打敗咗。呢個係一個著名嘅海盜啊！即係佢一件好出名嘅事咧，就係 Elizabeth I 要落馬車嗰陣時咧，有啲水喺度，佢除咗自己件貂袍，墊住喺地面俾 Elizabeth I 踩過嘅呢個人係。
手靚過我隻手。
第二幅嘅伊麗莎白女王啊，呢、個就呢、個最出名，呢、個 Sir Francis Drake， 佢就係最出名嘅海盜，佢就將美洲一笪地方變咗殖民地獻俾英女王，英女王係 Virgin 啊嘛，所以個州叫 Virginia。而且佢帶隊擊敗西班牙無敵艦隊，而且咧佢係環繞世界第二個環繞世界一次嘅人 ，Sir Francis Drake。呢個就係伊麗莎白嘅細佬 Henry the Eighth 嘅仔，就係 Edward the Sixth 啊，但係佢好早死咗啊。37年到53年，10幾歲死咗，就傳俾 Mary 傳俾 Elizabeth。
Yes, he put his own spin to it, as you would expect.
Henry the Eighth 死咗咧，傳俾個仔，但係個仔幾年咧就死咗，患病死咗，就揾翻個大女出嚟。嗰、個咧，首先咧佢哋嗰個首相唔想揾個大女，揾咗 Jane Eyre，結果嗰個咧 Jane Grey 係被斬首啊，做咗幾日就，因為佢始終係呢個 Henry the Eighth 嘅大女，但係佢虔信天主教，呢、個就叫 Bloody Mary，將新教嗰啲人殺死嘅呢、個係。 佢係虔誠嘅天主教徒。嗱，呢兩幅都係 Elizabeth the First。而喺佢個手上，英國就嗰個帝國就傾起啦。所以咧，如果嗰啲英國人選最偉大嘅君主咧，通常都會選 Elizabeth the First， 應該叫 Elizabeth the Great 嘅，其實終身冇嫁人。
Se reúnen. Sí, cariño, pero en la serie se ven juntas y yo he leído que ellas se cartearon mucho, pero nunca se conocieron en persona. Pero bueno.
呢個咧，佢咧 Mary Queen of Scots 咧係蘇格蘭女王，佢其實係伊麗莎白女王嘅兒孫女。Henry VII 個妹嫁咗去蘇格蘭，傳幾代咧就到佢。當呢 Henry VIII 嗰啲人死晒之後咧，佢本來輪到佢繼位，佢喺蘇格蘭俾人推翻咗，走去英國。佢將佢幽禁咗輪，將佢斬首。呢個係被話佢想推翻佢，係被斬首嘅。但係結果咧，佢個仔繼承咗英國皇位，呢個就變咗 Stuart Dynasty 啊。佢家族一路過嚟，4 Henry VI、Richard III， 呢兩個係 King 嚟嘅，呢兩個 King 嚟嘅 ，King Richard III 啊，呢個就係就係俾人話佢謀殺咗兩個侄嘅，呢個係。咁結果咧，嗰個 Tudor 咧就起嚟推翻㗎 Richard III。啲人話佢好殘酷嘅，其實呢個咧未必係事實嚟嘅，呢個係。好啦，開始啦，呢個就係呢個 Tudor 啦，呢個就係。呢個就係Henry VIII 就係娶8個老婆嗰個，佢係 Tudor Dynasty 嘅第2個人 ，7就奪得咗位，佢就 Henry VIII。呢個就係 Catherine of Aragon 喺西班牙，佢就係生唔到仔，係生咗女嘅。呢個其實就係佢就要同佢離婚，搞到創立咗新教同天主教反面。
You seem to know a lot. You like
Yeah,
the
yeah. I
Tudors.
like English history. I know English
You
history.
know about Margaret Beaufort?
Yeah.
Powerful woman.
Powerful woman. Yeah.
Very good. Very inspiring.
Sir Thomas More 呢個係 Sir Thomas More。呢個咧就唔係大革命嗰陣時嘅嗰個同一個名嘅 Thomas Cromwell， 佢就係幫呢個 Henry VIII 造成呢個離婚嘅，但係結果咧就係邊個被處死，冇幾耐咧佢被處死嘅 Anne Boleyn 被處死之後，就輪到佢被處死嘅，俾 Henry VIII 處死咗。呢個就係 Anne Boleyn 啦，就係佢生伊麗莎白1世嘅，佢就被斬首嘅。呢個就係好靚嘅佢紅色頭髮嘅，好高挑身材嘅呢個係。我哋頭先講咗佢第一個皇后 Catherine， 佢本嚟佢爸爸佢哥哥個老婆嚟嘅，後來咧天主教咧就話佢哥哥婚姻無效，就同佢離婚，話佢哋冇行過床，就嫁俾佢。佢又要同佢離婚，又天主教宣布佢個婚姻又無效，天主教都好多。其實天主教宗唔介意嘅，但係最大嘅問題係乜嘢咧 ？Catherine 係西班牙同埋神聖羅馬帝國嗰個 Emperor 個妹嚟嘅，佢哋死都唔肯，因此就反咗面。嗱，呢個第三個 Jane Seymour 就生咗唯一嘅男性繼承人，但係難產死咗後來。佢就話佢最中意就 Jane Seymour 嘅呢個人係呢個 Jane Seymour 係 Anne Boleyn 嘅 waitress 嚟嘅。呢個係最後一個，係第6個。呢個人好識做嘅，佢有份湊大呢個佢對Elizabeth the First 好好嘅，佢大力推行新教嘅呢個人係啊，大家睇下都幾靚呢個。嗱，中間點解唔見咗一個咧？嗰個冇畫個樣，嗰個嘢點咧？佢係德國公主，就畫幅相嚟俾佢睇，好靚。點知佢一睇咧，佢就唔肯要，就話佢咧係有個面度有麻，呃咗嘅。面就有麻甩啊！你麻甩啊！呢個係
即係其實係
啲湯咧100蚊3包啊，好耐冇咁樣減價啦。喺香港整嘅呢個大煮系列嘅湯包，總準備咗6款。嗱，呢啲咧就係同嗰啲常溫嗰啲唔同，呢個係急凍。急凍呢個味道咧係好啲嘅，其實係懷杞圓肉花膠湯最適合女性。杏仁白肺湯咧係店長推介。響螺慈實鴨腎湯滋陰補腎。紅棗椰子雞湯小朋友啱飲。仲有蟲草花水鴨湯懷杞螺頭竹絲雞湯，全部500 gram，500 gram 係即係多過1磅啊！咁就係夠3-4個人飲啊，要3-4碗啊，都係有湯渣嘅，入邊有湯渣，全部貨真價實，100蚊3包啊！呢啲湯好好飲，大家幫我支持下。